She walked into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom thinking her husband's badge could save her. But what happened next left millions speechless. You're about to witness one of the most shocking displays of entitled arrogance ever recorded, followed by a betrayal so devastating it will leave you speechless. This isn't just about a drunk driver facing justice. This is about the moment when a woman who's hidden behind her husband's authority for decades discovers that some things can't be fixed with a phone call to the right person. Let us know where you're watching from, because what Judge Caprio does to this arrogant woman and what her own husband does needs to be seen around the world. Thanks for watching Judge of Justice. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more powerful real-life courtroom moments. Let us know where you're watching from. It was a cold Monday morning in Providence Municipal Court. The city was waking up slowly, but inside the courtroom, tension already filled the air. Judge Frank Caprio, known around the world for his kindness and deep sense of fairness, looked over the list of cases for the day. He had seen every kind of person sit before him, from scared teenagers to seasoned lawbreakers, but nothing could prepare him for what was about to happen next. The next name on his docket, Christine Morrison, age 42, charged with driving under the influence, causing serious injury, leaving the scene of an accident, and reckless endangerment. It was a case that had already shaken the local community. People wanted justice, and today they were about to get it. Christine Morrison wasn't just any defendant. She was the wife of Police Captain David Morrison, one of Providence's most respected officers. For years, Christine had lived under the shadow and protection of her husband's badge. But when she stepped into that courtroom, she had no idea that the same badge she used as a shield would soon become the symbol of her downfall. For weeks earlier, on a quiet October evening, Christine left a downtown wine bar after 3 long hours of drinking with friends. Security cameras showed her stumbling, laughing loudly, and dropping her car keys twice before she managed to open her Mercedes SUV. At that moment, she made a choice, a deadly one. At 8:45 p.m., she drove away. Her blood alcohol level later tested at 0.15%, almost twice the legal limit. At 9:02 p.m., she blasted through a stop sign at the intersection of Hope Street and Angel Street, slamming into a small 1998 Honda Civic. Inside that car were Robert Shun, 73, and his wife Margaret Shun, 71, a gentle couple who had just spent the evening with their grandchildren. The crash was horrifying. The Honda spun 180 degrees and smashed into a telephone pole. Robert broke 3 ribs and shattered his collarbone. Margaret's hip fractured, her wrist broke, and she hit her head so hard that she lay unconscious for nearly an hour. Christine stopped for 15 long seconds. Witnesses later said she sat there, staring at the damage, hearing the cries of pain from the Chens, and then, instead of helping, she drove away. When police arrived, they followed a trail of broken car parts right to her home. Her Mercedes sat in the garage, its front crushed, the headlight shattered. Christine was inside, pretending to be asleep. Her husband was still at work. When officers woke her, her first words were not, "Is anyone hurt?" but "Do you know who my husband is?" That single sentence revealed everything. It wasn't fear or guilt. It was arrogance. The belief that power could erase wrongdoing. Now, for weeks later, Christine entered the courtroom wearing a Chanel jacket, sparkling jewelry, and a look that screamed confidence. She walked as if she owned the place. Her expensive lawyer carried a polished leather briefcase worth more than most people's rent. But Judge Caprio noticed something deeper. Her eyes carried no remorse, no worry, only pride. She took her seat, crossed her legs, and casually checked her phone. People in the courtroom whispered in disbelief. How could someone act so calm after almost destroying 2 innocent lives? Judge Caprio had seen arrogance before, but there was something different here. He quietly studied her. In over 30 years on the bench, he had learned that body language speaks louder than words, and Christine's body was saying it all. "I don't belong here. This is beneath me." When the bailiff called the case, the courtroom grew silent. The charges were read out, each one heavier than the last. DUI causing injury, leaving the scene, reckless endangerment. Each of these could send a person to prison for years. Christine's lawyer stood up, and began his speech. He spoke smoothly about how his client was deeply sorry, how she was a loving mother and wife, and how this accident was completely out of character. He painted Christine as a good person who simply made a mistake. It was a good performance, but Judge Caprio was not fooled. He had read every report, every witness statement, and every hospital record. He knew the pain she caused, and as the lawyer spoke, Christine Morrison checked her phone again. That was enough. Judge Caprio interrupted. His calm voice filled the room. "Mrs. Morrison," he asked, "do you understand the seriousness of what you've done?" Christine looked up, slightly annoyed. "Yes, Your Honor," she said coolly. "It was an unfortunate incident. I'm very sorry it happened. I'm willing to pay restitution." Her words landed like ice. She spoke as if she'd scratched someone's car door, not destroyed 2 lives. Judge Caprio leaned forward. "Do you remember leaving the scene?" he asked. Before she could answer, her lawyer jumped in. "Your Honor, my client was in shock. She didn't think clearly. She was traumatized." Caprio cut him off gently. "I'd like to hear it from her." Christine hesitated. For the first time, her mask slipped. "Yes," she whispered. "I remember. I panicked." Caprio repeated. "You had your car in the garage. You changed your clothes. You pretended to be asleep. That doesn't sound like panic. That sounds like planning." The room fell silent. The truth hung heavy. He then asked, "Have you reached out to the victims? Have you called them? Written them?" Again, silence. Christine didn't speak. Her lawyer finally said, "I advise her not to, Your Honor, for legal reasons." Judge Caprio sighed. "Legal reasons," he repeated softly. "Not human reasons." That one sentence struck the courtroom like lightning. Judge Caprio read from the victim's statement. Robert Shun, 73 years old, could no longer lift his grandchildren. Margaret Shun, still in rehabilitation, might never walk normally again. Their hospital bills were over $180,000. Their peace of mind was gone, and the woman who caused it all had not said a single word of apology. The judge looked at Christine, his eyes steady but sad. "Do you understand that you could have killed them?" Christine opened her mouth to reply, and that's when she made her biggest mistake. She stood up suddenly, anger flashing across her face. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she spoke loudly. "Your Honor, you don't understand who I am. You're making assumptions without knowing all the facts." The judge raised an eyebrow. "What facts am I missing?" Christine took a deep breath. "My husband is Captain David Morrison of the Providence Police Department. He's one of the highest-ranking officers in the city. If you start treating me like a criminal, you'll create problems. Problems for you and for this court. This can all be handled reasonably." A gasp spread through the courtroom. She had just threatened a judge, using her husband's name. For a moment, the courtroom froze. Even her lawyer went pale. He whispered, "Christine, sit down," but she ignored him. Judge Caprio remained calm. "Mrs. Morrison," he said quietly, "please clarify what you mean." Christine mistook his calmness for fear. She kept going. "My husband has strong connections in the legal system, prosecutors, judges, officers. I'm sure we can reach an understanding that's fair for everyone." She smiled slightly, believing she had control, but she was about to learn what real justice looks like. Judge Caprio asked, "Is Captain Morrison in the courtroom today?" Christine's confidence wavered. "No," she said softly. "He's busy, important responsibilities." The judge turned to the bailiff. "Check the gallery. Is there anyone here connected to this case?" The bailiff scanned the room. After a moment, he nodded toward the back. A man stood up. His voice carried strength and sadness. "Your Honor, I'm Captain David Morrison, Providence Police Department. Christine Morrison is my wife." The air disappeared from the room. Christine's face went white. Her husband had been sitting there the entire time, listening to every word, every threat, every excuse. He walked toward the bench, his steps heavy with shame. Christine tried to reach for him, whispering his name, but he pulled his arm away and kept walking. Judge Caprio spoke softly. "Captain Morrison, given what's been said, I believe it's only fair to allow you to speak." Every eye in the courtroom turned toward him, and what he said next would be remembered forever. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear the sound of the captain's footsteps echo through the room. Every person turned toward him as he walked to the front. a man in his late 40s, strong posture, calm face, and eyes full of sadness. He stopped in front of the judge and spoke in a steady, respectful voice. "Your Honor," he said, "I am Captain David Morrison, Providence Police Department. Christine Morrison is my wife." Christine froze. Her lips trembled, her face pale. The confident woman who had just threatened a judge now looked like a child caught in a storm. Judge Frank Caprio nodded politely. "Captain, I appreciate your presence. Given what your wife has said, I think it's only fair that you have a chance to speak." David Morrison took a deep breath. The courtroom waited in absolute silence. He began slowly, carefully choosing his words. "Your Honor, I had no idea my wife was going to use my name in this courtroom. I explicitly told her not to. I told her she must take full responsibility for what she's done. I'm here today not to defend her, but to defend the truth." Gasps filled the room. Even Christine's lawyer turned to look at him in disbelief. David's voice grew heavier, more emotional. "I've served in law enforcement for over 20 years. I've dedicated my life to justice, to protecting people. But over the years, I've watched my wife become someone I barely recognize. Someone who believes rules don't apply to her." Christine covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook, but no sound came out. David continued, "When I learned what happened, that she hit two innocent people, that she left them on the road, I was horrified. The first thing I did was contact my superiors. I told them I wanted no part in this case. I refused to use my badge to cover her actions." He turned to Judge Caprio. "Your Honor, I'm here because I want you to know I do not support what she did. I don't support her arrogance, her threats, or her attempts to use my name to escape justice. I believe she must face the full consequences of her actions." Christine's head dropped lower. Her body shook as tears began to fall, not from remorse, but from fear. For the first time, she realized that her shield was gone. David's voice trembled as he spoke again, this time softer. "Your Honor, I've loved Christine for 17 years, but I cannot stand by her when she behaves like this. The woman who walked into this courtroom today is not the woman I married. She's become someone who believes power gives her permission to hurt others." Every person in the room could feel the pain in his words. Even Judge Caprio, who had seen thousands of defendants, looked deeply moved. David then said something that would become the turning point of the entire trial. He looked at Judge Caprio and said firmly, "If you're considering the maximum sentence, I want you to know I support it. My wife nearly killed two innocent people and showed no true remorse. She deserves the full punishment allowed by law." The courtroom went silent again. For a few long seconds, nobody breathed. Christine looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "David, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. But he didn't respond. He wasn't finished. "Your Honor," he continued, "after the accident, I went to visit the victims, the Chens, in the hospital. Not as a police officer, but as a man who felt ashamed. I sat beside them and apologized for what my wife did." The audience listened in silence as he described his visit. "Mr. Robert Chun," he said, "is 73 years old. He's a Vietnam veteran, a man who's lived a life of service. His ribs were broken, his collarbone shattered. He told me he used to lift his grandchildren every weekend. Now, he can't even pick them up." David paused and took a breath. "And Mrs. Margaret Chun, she had surgery on her hip and wrist. She told me she still wakes up in fear, hearing the sound of the crash. They were coming home from their grandson's birthday party when it happened. They were happy. They were talking about how blessed they were." He stopped, his voice breaking. "And then my wife hit them. She changed their lives forever." Christine began to sob quietly. Her makeup smeared across her cheeks. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the reality of what she had done. David continued, his voice trembling now. "Mrs. Chun told me something I'll never forget. She said her 7-year-old grandson keeps asking if they're okay. He's afraid to get in cars now. He has nightmares. Your Honor, my wife didn't just hurt 2 people that night. She hurt an entire family." He turned his eyes toward Christine, and for the first time, anger flashed through the sadness. "You called it an unfortunate incident," he said, his voice sharp. "You tried to threaten a judge, Christine. You used my badge like a weapon. Do you have any idea what that means to me? My badge represents honor, duty, and sacrifice, and you turned it into a shield for your mistakes. Christine tried to speak. David, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. But he raised his hand, stopping her. Don't. I begged you for years to stop using my position to get special treatment. I told you it wasn't right. You never listened. The audience could feel the emotional weight of every word. Even the officers in the courtroom looked down, shaken by the captain's honesty. David then said the words that broke Christine completely. Your Honor, he said softly, after this hearing, I will be filing for divorce. I cannot stay married to someone who would do this and show no true remorse. Someone who would threaten a judge to escape consequences. I have to stand with what's right, not with what's comfortable. Christine gasped. Her hands shook. She cried openly now, whispering, Please don't do this. But her husband's face was set in stone. Judge Caprio looked at him with deep respect. Captain Morrison, he said, your courage and integrity are what the justice system needs more of. I want to thank you for your honesty. David nodded quietly. His eyes were filled with pain, but also relief. He turned and began walking back toward the gallery. Christine reached out for him as he passed. David, please, she whispered, her hand trembling. He stopped, looked at her for a long, silent moment. Then he said quietly, I don't know who you are anymore. He walked out of the courtroom. Christine was left standing alone at the defendant's table. Her once confident lawyer now avoided eye contact. The cameras focused on her face. The tears, the disbelief, the sudden realization that her life had fallen apart in front of the entire city. Judge Caprio waited for the room to settle. Then he turned toward her with a calm but firm expression. Mrs. Morrison, he said, in over 30 years on this bench, I have seen arrogance, I have seen pride, but what you have displayed here today is something else entirely. To threaten a judge using your husband's rank, while that husband sits here, ashamed of your actions, is one of the most disgraceful things I've ever witnessed. Christine sobbed harder. I didn't mean it like that, Your Honor. I was just. Caprio interrupted gently, his voice cold but steady. You meant exactly what you said. You believed that your husband's position could protect you. You thought power made you untouchable. But today, you learned that real justice cannot be bribed or threatened. He paused and looked directly into her eyes. Your husband is right. You nearly killed 2 people. You abandoned them. You showed no remorse. And when given the chance to make things right, you tried to use influence instead of honesty. The courtroom sat in silence as the judge picked up his gavel. I will now deliver my sentence. Everyone leaned forward. Even the journalists in the back stopped typing. Judge Caprio's voice carried through the room like thunder, calm but commanding. For driving under the influence causing serious bodily injury, maximum fine $5,000 and a 1-year license suspension. For leaving the scene of an accident, an additional $2,500 fine and 60 days in jail to be served on weekends over the next 6 months. Christine's mouth fell open, but he wasn't finished. For attempting to influence this court through threats and improper use of a law enforcement connection, 300 hours of community service. You will perform this service at Rhode Island Hospital's Trauma Center, working directly with victims of accidents. You will see firsthand what your choices cost people. Christine broke down, crying uncontrollably. Her lawyer stood up and began to argue. Your Honor, this is excessive. But Caprio raised his hand. Sit down, counselor. Your client had every advantage. Wealth, connections, a respected husband. And she chose arrogance. Justice is not for sale. The sentence stood. Christine covered her face as tears fell. The cameras caught every moment. Her collapse, her shock, her humiliation. The same woman who walked into court believing she could control everything now stood powerless before justice. As the bailiff escorted her away for processing, Judge Caprio's final words echoed through the courtroom. Mrs. Morrison, I hope this experience teaches you something that money and influence never could. True accountability. The moment Judge Frank Caprio's gavel struck the bench, it wasn't just a verdict. It was the birth of a viral legend. By that evening, clips from the courtroom flooded the internet. Headlines appeared everywhere. Police captain's wife threatens judge. Husband demands maximum sentence. Judge Frank Caprio delivers a historic punishment. Integrity wins. A husband chooses justice over privilege. Within hours, millions of people had seen it. The story spread across YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and news channels around the world. Everywhere, people were talking about one thing: how a police captain stood for justice, even when it meant losing his wife. But while the world watched in awe, Christine Morrison sat alone in a small holding room behind the courtroom, crying silently. For the first time in her adult life, there was no one to call, no connections to use, no husband's badge to hide behind. Her power was gone, her reputation shattered, and the internet, the same world she once showed her luxury life to, was now watching her fall. That night, local news replayed the footage again and again. People praised Judge Caprio for his fairness and courage. They called him the judge who reminded the world that justice has no favorites. And Captain David Morrison, her husband, became a symbol of integrity. Social media was filled with comments like, "This man is a true officer. He stood for what's right, even when it broke his heart. We need more men like Captain Morrison." But the comments about Christine were harsh. People called her the face of arrogance. Others said she deserved every bit of that sentence. For the first time, Christine saw herself through the eyes of others, and it broke her. Her first night in jail was cold, long, and quiet. The same woman who once slept on silk pillows now lay on a thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, hearing the echo of the judge's words. True accountability. Every weekend, for 6 months, she would report to the detention center, 60 long days of humiliation, silence, and reflection. On her first morning of community service at the Rhode Island Hospital Trauma Center, Christine stood frozen. The smell of antiseptic, the sound of wheelchairs, the sight of people in pain, all of it overwhelmed her. These were the people who lived through what she had caused. A nurse led her to the accident recovery unit. "You'll help clean rooms and assist with patient paperwork," the nurse said. "Many of our patients are victims of drunk driving. Try to remember that." Those words hit harder than any sentence. Days turned into weeks. Christine worked quietly, cleaning, folding, carrying supplies. Nobody recognized her at first, but soon whispers began. "That's the woman who hit those people," someone said. "She's the one from the Judge Caprio case," another added. Every time she heard it, her heart sank. She didn't argue. She didn't explain. She just worked harder. Slowly, something began to change inside her. She started to see the faces of real victims, people learning to walk again, people who cried in pain, people whose lives would never be the same. For the first time, she saw what an unfortunate incident really meant. One day, she was assigned to deliver files to the physical therapy wing. As she walked down the hallway, she froze. There, standing by a window with a cane in her hand, was Margaret Chun, the woman she had hit that night. Christine's heart stopped. She wanted to run. Her hands trembled so badly, she nearly dropped the files. Margaret turned slowly and saw her. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Margaret said softly, "So it's you." Christine nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, it's me." The silence stretched between them. Christine wanted to apologize, to fall to her knees, to say something. Anything. But all that came out was a choked, "I'm so sorry." Margaret looked at her calmly. "I've read your letters," she said. The court made sure they were delivered. "I know you've been doing your service here." Christine nodded again, tears filling her eyes. "I wanted to reach out before, but I was told not to. I know sorry doesn't change anything, but I think about you every single day." Margaret looked at her for a long moment, her eyes full of quiet strength. "You know," she said, "I still can't walk properly. Every step hurts. My husband still can't lift our grandchildren. Our little boy, our grandson, he cries at night because he thinks we might die in another car crash." Christine broke down. Please forgive me. I don't expect you to, but I need to say it. I am truly sorry. I hate what I did. I wish I could take it back." Margaret took a deep breath. "I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I see that you're trying. And that matters." Those words hit Christine harder than any punishment ever could. She covered her face and sobbed quietly. For the first time, her tears were real, not of fear, but of remorse. Over the next few weeks, Christine continued her community service at the hospital. She stopped wearing makeup. She stopped complaining. She started listening, really listening to patient stories. People who had lost limbs. People who survived because someone stopped to help. Every story was a mirror of her own mistake. She began to understand what Judge Caprio meant by, "You will see what your choices cost people." She saw it in the faces of those learning to walk again. She saw it in the eyes of families waiting outside operating rooms. She saw it in Margaret Shun, walking slowly with a cane, yet holding her head high with quiet dignity. That was the day Christine promised herself something. She would never again take life, privilege, or forgiveness for granted. 3 months passed. Christine's story continued to trend online. But this time the tone had changed. People were no longer just angry. They were curious. They asked, has she changed? Some commented, I hope she learns. Everyone deserves a second chance if they're truly sorry. News outlets followed up on the story. When journalists visited the trauma center, they were surprised to find Christine still there, mopping floors, smiling gently at patients, working silently. She doesn't talk about her past, a nurse said, but you can tell she carries it with her. Every single day. For the first time, Christine was learning what it meant to earn respect instead of demand it. On her final day of community service, she visited Margaret Shun again. Margaret was doing her physical therapy, lifting her legs slowly, carefully. When she saw Christine, she smiled faintly. How's the service going? She asked. It's changing me, Christine replied softly. I know I can never undo what I did, but I'm learning. I see what pain really looks like. Margaret nodded. That's good. Maybe this was what you needed. Not money, not influence, but humility. Christine nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you for not turning me away that day. You could have, but you didn't. Margaret gave her a small smile. Maybe everyone deserves one chance to change, as long as they truly mean it. That night, Christine went home to her small apartment. Her big house was gone. Her marriage was gone. But she sat by the window and whispered quietly to herself, maybe this is what starting over looks like. For the first time in years, she felt something pure, peace. Her punishment hadn't destroyed her. It had rebuilt her. 6 months later, Christine Morrison's sentence was finally over. The last weekend of jail was quiet. She didn't cry this time. She didn't complain. She just sat on her bunk, staring at her folded uniform, thinking about everything she had lost and everything she had learned. When the guard called her name for release, Christine stepped out into the morning light. The air felt different. The sun felt softer. For the first time in years, she noticed how beautiful the world could be when you weren't rushing to prove your worth. She was no longer the glamorous wife of a police captain. She was just Christine, a woman trying to rebuild her life. Her first stop wasn't her old home. She couldn't go there. Her husband, Captain David Morrison, had already filed for divorce. The papers were finalized a week earlier. She read them slowly, her hands shaking, but she didn't fight it. She knew he was right. He had chosen justice over loyalty, integrity over comfort. And even though it broke her heart, a small part of her respected him for it. David had always been a man of principle. And now, she finally understood what that really meant. Christine moved into a small, one-bedroom apartment on the edge of Providence. No designer furniture. No fancy car in the driveway. No private dinners with influential people. Just quiet. Every morning, she took the bus to the trauma center, the same hospital where she had done her community service. Even though her required hours were complete, she chose to keep volunteering. The staff was surprised. You're done here, a nurse told her. Christine smiled softly. Maybe, but I think I still have more to learn. And so she stayed, folding sheets, delivering meals, holding the hands of patients who were scared or in pain. For the first time in her life, she wasn't trying to be important. She was trying to be useful. Slowly, she began to change, not just on the outside, but deep within. Her arrogance melted away. Her words became gentler. Her smile became real. When people asked her why she was there, she didn't hide anymore. "I made a terrible mistake," she would say quietly. "I hurt people. I lost everything because I thought I was untouchable." But Judge Frank Caprio taught me that real justice isn't about punishment. It's about learning who you truly are when the mask falls off. That honesty touched people. Some nurses began to talk to her more. Patients would ask for her by name. Christine had become someone others could trust, something money and power had never earned her. Meanwhile, life had slowly started healing for Robert and Margaret Shin. Robert's ribs had mended, though he still struggled to lift heavy things. Margaret still walked with a cane, but she was stronger now, both physically and emotionally. They attended therapy together, sometimes holding hands while walking down the hospital corridor. People said they were a symbol of grace, two souls who refused to let bitterness win. One day, Margaret saw Christine again near the hospital entrance. Christine tried to turn away, but Margaret called out softly, "Christine." Christine stopped, turning with nervous eyes. Margaret smiled faintly. "You're still here?" she said. Christine nodded. "Yes, I still work here part-time now. It keeps me grounded." Margaret stepped closer. "I'm glad. I think what you're doing matters." Christine's eyes filled with tears. "You have no idea how much that means to me." Margaret touched her hand gently. "Maybe I can't forgive everything, but I can see that you've changed. That's something my husband and I both hoped for." For a moment, both women stood in silence. Two lives forever connected by one terrible night, yet somehow bound together by forgiveness and growth. Months passed, and Christine continued working at the hospital. She no longer looked like the woman who once walked into court with her head high and her phone in her hand. She dressed simply. She spoke softly. She rode the bus to work, sitting beside people she once would have ignored. And yet, she was happier. She didn't have wealth, status, or privilege anymore. But she had something new: peace. She found meaning in helping others, in apologizing, in listening. Every time she looked at a patient struggling to recover, she was reminded of her own pain and how far she had come. Meanwhile, Captain David Morrison continued serving at the Providence Police Department. His decision to stand for justice had made him a quiet hero. His story was shared in police academies, community meetings, and even leadership seminars as an example of moral strength. But he never spoke about Christine publicly. When people asked, he simply said, "Everyone must face their truth." I did mine. She did hers. He had started seeing someone new, a fellow officer who shared his values of honesty and humility. He didn't hate Christine. In fact, deep down, he wished her well. He just couldn't be part of her old life anymore. 1 year after the trial, a local news station aired a follow-up special titled, "Where Are They Now? The Case That Shook Providence." The reporter visited the hospital, where Christine was now a permanent employee in the administration department. She was in charge of coordinating patient care for accident victims, the very kind of cases that once made her avoid responsibility. When asked how she felt about the past, Christine spoke slowly. "I'll never forgive myself for what I did," she said. "But I'm learning that guilt alone doesn't change anything. Change happens when you use your pain to help someone else." Her words touched everyone who watched. People commented online, "This is what true justice looks like." Judge Caprio didn't just punish her, he transformed her. Accountability is not about destroying someone. It's about rebuilding them the right way. The program ended with a short interview with Judge Frank Caprio himself. The reporter asked, "Your Honor, do you believe Christine Morrison truly changed?" Judge Caprio smiled kindly. "I believe some people need to lose everything before they can find out who they really are," he said. Christine Morrison lost her husband, her privilege, and her freedom. But maybe, just maybe, she found something far more valuable. She found accountability. The reporter nodded. "So, in a way, justice worked?" Caprio replied softly, "Justice always works when it teaches a soul to become better." That line became famous again across social media. Justice always works when it teaches a soul to become better. People shared it under videos, memes, and motivational reels. Christine's story became a reminder that sometimes the hardest fall leads to the greatest rise. Christine now spends her evenings volunteering at an alcohol recovery group. She tells her story honestly. No excuses, no hiding. She talks about the night she almost ruined 2 lives, the moment she lost her husband, and how Judge Caprio's courtroom became her turning point. People listen in silence. Some cry. Others nod slowly, understanding that pain can change a person if they let it. Christine always ends her talk the same way. If you ever think your status, your money, or your connections can protect you, remember me. Remember that nothing can protect you from the truth. The only thing that saves you is honesty, humility, and change. It's been 2 years since that unforgettable day in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom. The story that once shocked the world has now become a lesson, not just for Christine Morrison, but for anyone who has ever let pride control their choices. Christine wakes up every morning at 6 a.m. Her life is simple now. She brews her coffee, watches the sunrise, and thanks God that she still has another day to do better. There are no luxury cars in her driveway, no designer handbags hanging on her walls, and no one calling her Captain Morrison's wife. She's just Christine, humble, quiet, and at peace. She still works at the hospital. The staff loves her now, not for her name or her past, but for her heart. When new patients come in, victims of crashes, accidents, or reckless drivers, Christine is the first person they meet. She listens to them. She comforts their families. She holds their hands and says softly, "You're not alone. You're going to get through this." They don't know who she used to be. They only know who she is now, a woman who understands pain, regret, and change. One afternoon, while organizing patient files, Christine received a letter. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. It was from Margaret Shun. She opened it slowly, her heart pounding. "Dear Christine, I've been walking without my cane lately. My doctors say it's a miracle, but I think it's more than that. I think forgiveness has healed me. I've seen how much you've changed, and I believe people can grow when they choose humility over pride. I wanted you to know, I forgive you. Not because I've forgotten, but because I don't want pain to own me anymore. Take care of yourself, Christine. Keep doing good. You're helping more people than you realize. Margaret Shun." Christine held the letter to her chest and cried quietly for a long time. Those were the words she had prayed to hear, not for her pride, but for her peace. It wasn't about being forgiven by others anymore. It was about learning to forgive herself. That night, she sat by the window of her small apartment and thought about everything. The crash, the courtroom, her husband standing before Judge Caprio, choosing truth over comfort, and a sentence that changed her life forever. In that moment, she realized something profound. Judge Frank Caprio didn't just punish her, he saved her. He forced her to see what arrogance had blinded her to, that no one is above the law, and that real justice doesn't destroy, it teaches. 1 year later, Christine attended a local event where Judge Caprio was giving a speech on justice and compassion. She waited until the end, her heart racing. When most people had left, she approached him quietly. "Your Honor," she said softly, "you may not remember me, but—" Judge Caprio smiled gently. "Christine Morrison," he said. "Yes, I remember." Her eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to thank you. You gave me the hardest year of my life, but also the most important one." The judge looked at her kindly. "You found your truth," he said. "That's what justice is supposed to do." Christine nodded. "I did, and I'll never forget it." After that day, Christine began volunteering as a speaker for road safety programs across Rhode Island. She spoke in schools, community halls, and recovery centers. Her message was simple but powerful. One careless choice can destroy lives. I know because I made that choice. But if you truly face your mistakes, if you stop blaming, stop hiding, and start changing, you could become someone better. Accountability doesn't break you. It builds you. People listened. Some cried. Some hugged her after the sessions, thanking her for being brave enough to tell her truth. Christine no longer ran from her past. She used it to protect others from repeating it. Meanwhile, Captain David Morrison continued serving with honor. Though he had moved on, he once told a fellow officer, "I'm proud of her now, not because of who she was, but because of who she became." He never remarried quickly. He focused on his work and helping his community. In a way, both he and Christine had found peace, separately, but with mutual respect. Their story became more than a scandal. It became a lesson, one that echoed far beyond Providence. And that's what makes this story unforgettable. It's not just about a woman who threatened a judge. It's about how justice, when done right, doesn't just punish, it transforms. It's about a husband who chose honor over convenience. It's about a judge who stood firm, calm, and fair, teaching the world that real power comes from integrity, not influence. And most of all, it's about second chances. Today, when people talk about Judge Frank Caprio's Courtroom, they mention this case as one of the most powerful examples of real justice, where truth defeated privilege and humility replaced arrogance. Christine Morrison's story reminds us that even when we fall the hardest, we can still rise stronger if we're brave enough to face ourselves. So if you're watching this right now, take a moment to think. Backhand index pointing right, have you ever made a mistake that hurt someone? Backhand index pointing right, have you ever wished you could start again? Backhand index pointing right, remember, change doesn't begin when others forgive you. It begins when you forgive yourself and take responsibility for what you've done. That's where real freedom begins. If this story touched your heart, red heart, hit the like button. It tells us to bring you more true stories of justice and humanity. Speech balloon, drop a comment below. What do you think about Judge Frank Caprio's decision? Bell, subscribe to Judge of Justice and never miss another real-life courtroom story that restores faith in humanity. Globe showing Europe, Africa, share this video with someone who believes people can change, because sometimes one story can open 1,000 hearts. Christine Morrison once thought her husband's badge could protect her from justice. She learned that it was her husband's integrity and Judge Caprio's compassion that protected her soul instead. That's not just punishment. That's redemption. That's real justice.